Good morning and welcome. We are so glad you're joining us today, whether you're here in person or joining us from home. If you would like to learn more about how to become active and engaged in our congregation, we would love to hear from you. Please fill out a visitor form on our website at www.unitytemple.org, or you can stop by the welcome table after service, or you can reach out to me directly at tlewis@unitytemple.org. I look forward to hearing from you soon, and I hope you enjoy the service.
Hi, I'm Marty Swisher, music director at Unity Temple and conductor of the Unity Temple Choir. I'm here to announce the return of the Unity Temple Choir concert to be held on Saturday, December 18 and Sunday, December 19. Both concerts will begin at 4 p.m. We open with shimmering Bach, a joyful spiritual, and we'll be presenting a multi-movement work entitled Dream Weaver, which features the stunningly beautiful voice of soprano Rosalind Lee. We'll all be masked, and we'll ask you to be as well and bring proof of vaccination so that all of us can safely be enveloped by the soulful sounds of our choir. Tickets can be purchased on our website or from me before or after our services. Happy December.
Good morning and welcome. Good morning. My name is Kimberly Brumersky and I serve on your Board of Trustees here at Unity Temple. It is my very great pleasure to welcome you here this morning. If you're here for the first time, thank you for joining us. We look forward to getting to know you better. We invite everyone present in the sanctuary today to join our in-person community time immediately following the service. Or online, Zoom community time will happen right after the service. The link to that can be found in your e-beacon or Friday's email, or you may send an email to tlewis@unitytemple.org to request the link. We appreciate everyone here in person wearing a mask over your nose and mouth during the service as a way, excuse me, as a way to protect each other. Excuse me. Each week, we remind ourselves of our congregation's core values. They are connection, transformation, justice, and acceptance. Our mission is to embody these core values by inspiring compassion, nurturing wonder, and serving community. If you have registered for the annual meeting that begins at noon today, and you received a link to your email to join us via Zoom, we are so glad that you are with us today. We hope you find the service inspiring and meaningful. I invite you now to take a moment to greet one another, both online and in the sanctuary.
Are you okay? Yes. All right. I'm sorry we don't. If I hadn't already taken a sip of water, I was going to stand here. That's exactly why that water is there. Like, well, there's some sermons where it just works, and you just can't. You gotta have some water. I noticed you were. It's fine. I bet it boosted.
Our chalice lighter today is Eamon Schnitz. Eamon likes to make cool creations, and he counted to 200 by 40s for his mom's 40th birthday. Ready? We are Unitarian Universalists. This is the church of the open mind, the loving hearts, and the helping hands. We take care of the planet Earth and each other.
Our call to worship this morning is by Jane Malden. For our community gathered here, for the Spirit that called us together and drew us to this place, whether physical or virtual, we give thanks this day. For moments we have shared with others, for times when we have reached out across barriers of distance and fear, for times when others have reached out to us, for moments when we have discovered another along our path. We give thanks this day. For this community of celebration and growth, introspection and solitude, for all those moments of that peace which passes all understanding, we give thanks this day. For our gathering together out of distant places, for our weaving together out of many separate selves, this hour of celebration and worship, we give thanks this day. Whoever you are, wherever you are on your life's journey, and wherever you are in the world, you are welcome here. Come, let us worship together.
We are going, heaven knows where we are going, but we know we will win, and we will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. It will be hard.
join me in our covenant, which is printed on your order of service. Love is the doctrine of this congregation. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humanity in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other and with God.
Good morning. My name is Judy Gallardo Grace, and I'm one of your pastoral associates. Holding each other is the time in our service where we pause to share and reflect on joys and sorrows and important events that have touched us during this past week. As a community whose mission commits us to inspiring compassion in our life and in our church, we wish to companion with you and sit with you in times of joy and sorrow. To share a milestone or event in your life with us, please email pastoralassociates@unitytemple.org by 8 p.m. Friday evening. You may also light a candle at the Chalice table, which is usually right down in front before the service, as a remembrance for an event. These are the milestones and events that were shared with us this past week. Diane Wilson gratefully shares that Brain Dance, the medical memoir of her recovery from TBI and journey into a new career, recently won a couple of big awards: Nonfiction Book of the Year and #1 True Story from the Independent Authors Network, which is an international contest. Unity Temple, she said, especially the choir, figures large into a chapter or two. Thanks, readers, writers, choir, and all supporters. Kellyanne Clark is sad to share that her father, Charles, passed away on December 4th. His death was more painful because Kelly was on her way to see him in his last hours, but he died 2 hours before she arrived. Charles was an Army veteran. He worked for 32 years as a reliability engineer, and after retirement, he worked as a mortgage officer. He also enjoyed many outside activities. He was active in Big Brothers and Big Sisters of America and participated in several mission trips to St. Vincent and the Dominican Republic. He loved spending time at the cabin with all of his family and friends, and especially fishing with his grandchildren. He will be greatly missed. Jackie Corarubias is being induced tomorrow, and she and her husband Philip ask for positive thoughts for labor and delivery on baby number 2. Violence touches the lives of many people, both inside and outside of our community. We hold in our hearts all those whose lives have been impacted by violence as either victims or perpetrators. Let us hold in our hearts each of these joys and sorrows shared, as well as those unspoken but present in this community, as we enter together into a moment of prayer and meditation. This is Lifeline by David Blanchard. Beginnings and endings always seem to capture our imagination and attention. Beginnings and endings hold some secrets that we are forever wanting to reveal. Beginnings and endings give a degree of definition to our lives, and when we encounter reminders of these bookends of life, we can't help but remember something of our own beginnings and wonder about our own endings. Beginnings and endings have a magic and a mystery that cause us to stop and listen. When we are in the presence of such moments of transformation, when we publicly and collectively welcome a baby to the world or grieve a death, when we privately mark the parting with a friend or the rebirth of someone's spirit, we feel ourselves drawn into the profound and compelling encounter with the most vital and real dimensions of life. Whenever we witness something of a birth or a death, a part of us knows we too share in that moment. In it, part of us may die a little. In it, a part of us could be born again. Once upon a time, someone held us when we were born. And someday, somewhere, we will move through the seasons of life in between and step back and forth through memory and imagination from what was our beginning to what will be our end.
If you are someone who likes to come close when you're listening to a story, I invite you to come down. I'm going to sit in the chair right in front of the bells table. You can come meet me there if you'd like to come down. I have a book today called Little Tree by Lauren Long. Once there was a little tree filled with little leaves. Who was surrounded by other little trees who had little leaves of their own. In the heat of long summer days, Little Tree's leaves kept him cool. The squirrels would climb up on his branches to play. The morning dove landed in him and sang her fluty song. The little tree was sure to grow up big and strong. Autumn arrived and cool winds filled the air. The wind tickled the little tree as it passed through his branches and ruffled his leaves. The air grew cold, and the leaves on all of the trees changed color, becoming yellow, red, and orange. Then, one by one, the trees began to drop their leaves. But not Little Tree. He just hugged his leaves tight. "Hello, Little Tree," said a squirrel. "You're supposed to drop your leaves now." But Little Tree was unsure. What would he do without his leaves? Winter came. "What are you still doing with all your leaves?" asked the doe. Little Tree just hugged his leaves tight. Springtime arrived, and the little forest burst into life again. The other trees grew bright, new leaves. The squirrel played in their branches. Little Tree could hear the mourning dove singing her fluty song. Look, what does that little tree look like? It looks like a brown tree. It still has its brown leaves, doesn't it? Yeah, you need to let go of your leaves. That's right. That's what we're telling this tree. The seasons continued to come and go. "Little tree," quacked a duckling, "your leaves are brown. Are you feeling sick?" A fox said, "Little tree, it's autumn. It's time for you to drop your leaves. You can do it. Ready? 1, 2. No, that's exactly what the little tree said. But Little Tree just hugged his leaves tight. All around the forest grew and grew. One summer, Little Tree could no longer feel the sunlight. The squirrels played high above on the broad, tall trees. And the mourning dove sang so far away that he could hardly hear her fluty song. Look, what does a little tree look like compared to those other trees? It looks like a baby, yeah, like all the trees around him grew up so tall. Autumn came again. Leaves began to blanket the ground. Little Tree looked up at the other trees, at their branches reaching high up into the sky. He remembered that all the other trees had been his size. And then he let go. Finally. At last, as his last leaf floated to the ground, for the first time, Little Tree felt the harsh cold of winter. But in time, what's happening to Little Tree? He's growing. Yeah, he's growing up. He's got new green leaves. Yeah, something happened. Look at that. It's getting taller and taller. Once there was a little tree. And now it's a big tree. And we can't even tell the difference now, can we? Because it grew so big like the other trees. The end. Thank you for helping me tell this story. What, Eamon? You think it's that one? Yeah. There's lots of squirrels playing on it.
Is that where the picture was of the little tree?
Yeah, look how big it is. All right, thank you so much. Okay, should we go out and see Miss Val and do some fun things together in Unity House? Let's do it.
It is the third week of Advent, a Christian tradition where our own roots come from. Advent is a season of waiting. In the first week, we lit a candle for hope, which we will relight today. Last week, we lit a candle for love. This week, we light our candle for peace. We await for peace in the world. We await for peace in our hearts. And we recognize that sometimes the only way to find peace is to make our way through difficulty and conflict to a new understanding.
Thank you, Bell Choir. I think we owe them a round of applause. What a joy it is to have the Bell Choir with us today. So, it took me until I was in my early 40s when I was playing roller derby to realize that I'm kinda a jock. I never thought about myself that way, or even thought about myself as athletic at all, even though in retrospect I played t-ball, softball, gymnastics, soccer, field hockey, rugby, swam on the swim team, rode horses, took karate, and more at various times when I was growing up. The reason I never thought of myself as athletic was because in elementary school in the 1980s, I was terrible at the annual Presidential Fitness Awards. Yeah. If you grew up in the 60s, 70s, or 80s, you may remember this torture. Every year in PE, we were evaluated on how many pull-ups and sit-ups we could do, how far we could jump. We were timed in a shuttle run and a 50-yard dash, and the most dreaded, from my perspective anyway, the 600-yard walk run. And then we were rated based on our scores. If they were good enough, we would get one of 3 different tiers of medals of awards. Do you remember this? I never got even the lowest tier. That cemented my understanding of myself as slow, unathletic, and kind of clumsy. Honestly, I don't think we realize how deeply we impact our children's self-identity at such a young age, and how difficult that can be to overcome. But back to that 600-yard walk run. 600 yards is just over 1/3 of a mile. I had to look this up because it felt like it was a 2-hour race. It felt like it was a marathon to me. I hate running, in case you haven't picked up on that already. I have always hated running. I have run a half marathon to prove to myself and everyone else how much I hate running. I know some of you love it. No shade. That's good. In fact, I'm a little bit envious. I can't stand it. Anyway, I would use all of these mental devices to get me through those 600 yards that felt like it lasted hours, but really in probability it was probably closer to 15 minutes or 10 minutes, probably 15 minutes. One technique I often used was pretending that I was Spider-Man riding on a skateboard. And I would shoot out webs to the various trees and then pull myself on my skateboard along. I'm sure I looked a bit strange, trying to run, but it didn't matter. It got me through. Another technique that I used was I would imagine myself on fast forward, like the new VCR that my family had. I would just pretend I was fast forwarding through the run, and that soon enough I would be at the end of it, and I would imagine getting on with my day and having fast forwarded through this rough spot. I think we probably all feel that way sometimes, when we don't like what we're going through and we just wish we were at the end of it. Wouldn't it be great if we could just fast forward through to the end of this pandemic? Right? Or fast forward through to the end of an interim period the congregation is experiencing, or fast forward through to Christmas already, or through a degree program that you're working on, or through waiting for a diagnosis. When we feel stuck in situations that just feel like they are dragging on and on and on. Kind of actually like how I hear many of us will feel in April when it's still winter. We'll be fast forwarding to summer or asking for it. We human beings are very, very creative when it comes to avoiding pain and suffering. We have various techniques, some healthy and some unhealthy, for trying to get through these slogs. We retreat into books or Netflix. We self-medicate with various mood-altering substances. We pretend we are fine, even though we aren't. But the thing is, I think we know deep in our hearts that the only way we will get out of most of these slogs is by going through them. The only way out is through. This phrase, the only way out is through, comes from a Robert Frost poem called Servant of Servants. This long and rambling poem contains the stream of consciousness thoughts of a lonely, overworked New England farm wife who tends the farm for her husband and his workers and is very tired. In the poem, there's a man named Len who has moved into the woods and leaves by himself and has no responsibilities. Here is an excerpt. Remember that this is told from the farm wife's point of view. It's rest I want. There, I have set it out. From cooking meals for hungry, hired men and washing dishes after them, from doing things over and over that just won't stay done. By good rights, I ought not to have so much put on me, but there seems no other way. Len says one steady pull more ought to do it. He says the best way out is always through. And I agree to that, or insofar as that I can see no way out but through, leastways for me, and then they'll be convinced. Did you catch that? Len, the guy who lives by himself and has no responsibilities, is basically using this phrase, the best way out is always through, to keep this frustrated woman in her place, who sees no way out except death, and that'll show him. As demonstrated in this poem, the phrase, the only way out is through, or the best way out is through, has often been used to keep people in their place, like this farm wife. That was her role, right? So she should just get through it. But that is absolutely not what I am talking about here and today. There are some things to which we should never become reconciled, that we should never just shrug our shoulders and accept, like an abusive spouse or a toxic work environment. As Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. proclaimed, I say very honestly that I never intend to become adjusted to segregation and discrimination. I never intend to become adjusted to religious bigotry. I never intend to adjust myself to economic conditions that will take necessities from the many to give luxuries to the few, leave millions of God's children smothering in an airtight cage of poverty in the midst of an affluent society. I never intend to adjust myself to the madness of militarism, the self-defeating effects of physical environment. So when I say the only way out is through, I want to be clear that this is not what I am talking about. I am not talking about situations as much as I am talking about our emotions. I am talking about how the only way to get through our feelings is to allow ourselves to feel them and to work through them. So often, we want to take uncomfortable emotions and put them in a box and ignore them. Heck, I've got a very secure padlocked box in my heart that I've been known to put powerfully uncomfortable emotions into for years. But then they just stay there, festering, leaking their toxicity into every aspect of our lives. And then they tend to come out a little sideways. Oh, beloveds, we all know how this works, right? We get a diagnosis and we're afraid, and so we take it out on the medical office receptionist. Or we experience micro or macro aggressions at work and come home and take our anger or frustration out on our spouse or the kids. Or we're sad, grieving the loss of the way things used to be at church, and we take it out on church volunteers or staff. What I find fascinating is that it turns out if we allow ourselves to feel our feelings, if we process them, if we work through them, it turns out that we can actually dramatically change the situation we're in that is causing them, because we have allowed ourselves to experience the growth that comes when we process our emotions. We can be transformed. A friend of mine talks about this when she talks about her divorce. How for years she felt ignored, alone, isolated, frustrated, overworked. But she kept trying to convince herself she didn't feel those ways, that she was fine. She was fine. It was fine. He was fine. She was fine. It wasn't until she began to allow herself to actually experience her feelings as valid that she found the inner strength to change the situation. Of course, there are some situations we cannot change, like the pandemic. But we can change what our relationship is to what's happening around us when we allow ourselves to acknowledge how we feel about it, when we allow ourselves to acknowledge and process our feelings. In 2018, Dr. Gail Gross published a book about grief with this title, The Only Way Out is Through. After the sudden death of her adult daughter in 1990, Gross dove into studying family development and human behavior and got several advanced degrees as a part of her healing process. Now an expert in this subject matter, Dr. Gross writes, "What I ultimately discovered is that if you allow yourself to have your grief rather than resist it, acceptance, personal reconstruction, and restoration are possible. Your life, though forever changed, can become even more vital than before." So often, we are like the little tree in our message for all ages. We just want to hold on to those leaves. We want to hold on to what we know, to what we have, especially if losing our leaves means we're going to get cold, we're going to suffer. But the only way to grow is to let go. Let go of pretending everything is okay. Let go of wanting to fast forward through these emotions. Let go and maybe, just maybe, allow our lives to become more vital, to become transformed. The little tree was unable to grow, unable to reach its potential until it worked through its fear about being cold, its sadness. It had to work through its sadness over losing its leaves, its worry about what came next. But when it did work through these feelings, it found itself transformed, stronger, more courageous, ready for whatever was next. When we accept our feelings and allow ourselves to work through them, this can become a source of clarity in our new way of being, and it can give us the power to move into that new direction. Ignoring the pandemic won't make it go away. Convincing yourself that everything is fine at work or at home when it clearly is not won't make the situation better. We can't fast forward through this interim period at Unity Temple. If we put our feelings about these difficult matters into a box and lock them away, we deny ourselves the opportunities for growth that can come if we instead allow ourselves to sit with and work through these uncomfortable feelings. Regarding the interim ministry here at Unity Temple, this is one reason we keep rehashing what some of you would rather we just fast forwarded through. Why we had the town hall last week. Why we will spend more time this winter and this spring talking about the rich history in this congregation. Beloveds, this is the work. This is the work. We need to allow ourselves to feel the feelings, to work through them in order to be transformed, in order to move on healthy and strongly and courageously to what's next. Yes, sometimes it's a slog. Sometimes it hurts. Sometimes it's scary, and frankly, sometimes it just sucks. We often don't know where we're going or where we will end up. In so many ways, we find ourselves upon a threshold facing an unknown future, and it's gonna be hard. I won't lie to you. It's gonna be hard, and the road will be muddy and rough and sloggy. Ugh. But we'll get there. We'll get there. In our individual lives and in our communal lives, may we allow ourselves to feel even, especially, the icky stuff. May we remember that boxing up our feelings won't work. Pretending we are Spider-Man on a skateboard won't work. Fast forwarding won't work. Instead, may we give ourselves the space and the time we need to process our emotions so that we might harness them and be transformed. The only way out of them, after all, is to work through them. Blessed be.
Good morning. I'm Eric Johnson from Housing Forward, and it's a pleasure to join you this morning. While I personally do not have not been in attendance to this wonderful, I can't talk all of a sudden. I've not been in attendance here. I know two things. I know as a longtime Oak Park area resident, your incredible commitment to the community and your incredible commitment to social justice. As a Housing Forward team member, I know your long-time passionate partnership in helping people in housing crisis and who are experiencing homelessness. Each week, Unity Temple gives the Sunday offering to an organization that aligns with your values. This week, you are aligning your values and supporting Housing Forward. When we talk about home, for many of us, that concept means comfort and peace, a place to enjoy family, and a place to enjoy love. But for people experiencing homelessness and housing crisis, those basic comforts are far from reach. Housing Forward exists to bring those into reach and to create a permanent home and the stability that accompanies it for those we support. Each year, we help more than 2,000 families, individuals, men, women, and children, to get closer to that comfort of a home. You may donate today by placing a check or cash in the donation box in the front pew in the main floor after the service, or by sending a check to the Unity Temple office with Housing Forward's name in the memo line, or by following the instructions on your screen. On behalf of the people we serve, we thank you for thinking of Housing Forward. May what you give bring you joy. Thank you.
Whose in the soul's deep yearnings, like our forebears in their time, we seek out the Spirit's wholeness in the endless human quest. Look inside your souls, the kindling of the hearth fire, pilgrims new. Find the Spirit always restless, find it in each mind and heart. Touch and hold that ancient yearning, kindling for a new-found truth. Stand we now upon the threshold, facing futures yet unknown. Hearth behind us, wayside hostel, built by those who knew wild roads. Guard we ere their sacred embers, carried in our minds and hearts.
Our closing words today are some of my favorite, from the Reverend Wayne Arneson. Take courage, friends. The way is often hard, the path is never clear, and the stakes are very high. Take courage, for deep down there is another truth. You are not alone. May it be so.